All right, breaking news. The Trump admin just got slapped in the face after sparking another intense legal showdown with Harvard University. So a judge just came out with a 72-page ruling. In it, the judge cites Trump's own Truth Social posts in order to essentially say, dude, you can't do this. This is retaliatory, this is illegal, and you can't just remove the academic autonomy from one of the nation's top institutions by stripping their ability to have international students. It's absolutely insane, and that's about a quarter of their student body. So, as we do, I want to break down the actual court document. We're going to go and we're going to concisely explain why the Trump admin is taking illegal actions, and then we'll have a broad overview of why this is harmful, wrapped all into a 10-minute video. If you appreciate what I do, make sure you drop a like. And naturally, YouTube doesn't promote the truth sometimes. So if you subscribe, become a part of the 30% of people who watch my videos that are subscribed, it would mean the world to me. Let's just start here. Let's start broadly. A federal judge has temporarily halted the Trump administration's ban on Harvard University's ability to enroll international students. U.S. District Court Judge Allison Burroughs ruled hours after the nation's oldest and wealthiest college filed the suit on Friday. It only took hours for the judge to rule. Harvard argued revocation of its certification of the Student and Exchange Visitor Program was, quote, clear retaliation for its refusal of the government's ideologically rooted policy demands. Simple. Burroughs is the same judge considering a separate lawsuit from Harvard challenging the admin's freeze of $2.65 billion in federal funding, but with this one, she ruled quite quickly to halt and file a temporary restraining order. Harvard's latest complaint argues the decision Thursday to drop the school from its SCVP program violates the law. Quote, it is the latest act by the government in clear retaliation for Harvard exercising its First Amendment rights. Burroughs, an Obama appointee, said in her order Harvard had shown, quote, it will sustain immediate and irreparable injury, meaning Harvard would essentially not be able to function without international students, and here's why. Harvard student body is made up 27% of international students. These foreign students have to pay full tuition, which subsidizes the tuition for many, many domestic students. So Harvard acts as a university where people can get top-tier education, scientists, doctors, lawyers. It's really, really solid, and a lot of it can be subsidized by foreign students. It's a win-win. The smartest people from other countries come here, study to help research medicine and develop all of our technology, and then in turn we get their labor, their research and everything, and then in turn we get their skills, their research, eventually hopefully their labor into our workforce so they can help us, research and develop, and then our students get a win as well. But let's see what this 72-page court ruling says, because I found it very interesting. They demonstrate how this is very, very retaliatory. The government's termination of Harvard's certification is the culmination of its unprecedented and retaliatory attacks on academic freedom at Harvard. It starts off pretty dramatically. It says, for more than 70 years, Harvard University has been certified by the federal government to enroll international students under the F-1 visa program. Harvard has over time developed programs and degrees tailored to international students and invested millions to recruit the most talented such students. That's what makes America great, the ability for people to come here and study and contribute. The revocation is a blatant violation of the First Amendment, the Due Process Clause, and the Administrative Procedure Act. It is the latest act by the government in clear retaliation for Harvard exercising its First Amendment rights to reject the government's demands to control Harvard's governance, curriculum, and the, quote, ideology of its faculty and students. The government's actions are unlawful for other equally clearly and pernicious reasons. I love reading court documents. Yes, we can shit on the Trump administration all day, but hearing a judge put it in legalese, very, very satisfying. Keep in mind, this is page 1 of the document. That was page 1. With the stroke of a pen, the government has sought to erase a quarter of Harvard's student body, international students who contribute significantly to the university and its mission, and to America, as I pointed out. Harvard's certification is essential for each of Harvard's thousands of international students to lawfully remain in the country while they complete coursework, obtain degrees. Now let's get on to the part where we talk about the retaliatory nature of the Trump admin. So again, this says the government's termination of this certification education is a culmination of unprecedented and retaliatory attacks. In the recent weeks and months, through a multi-agency task force to combat anti-Semitism, the government has conditioned Harvard's continued receipt of numerous federal benefits, saying we won't give you these benefits if you don't teach what we want. But to continue, if we skip to page 30 of this court ruling, it says, the demand letter from the Trump administration saying you must do all of these things reiterated the government's expectation of, quote, immediate cooperation in implementing these critical reforms. On April 14th of 2025, Harvard declined to accept the government's demands, as it should. President Garber, in a letter to Harvard University, wrote, quote, although some of the demands outlined by the government are aimed at combating anti-Semitism, the majority represent direct governmental regulation to the intellectual conditions at Harvard. President Garber, president of Harvard, added that no government, regardless of which party is in power, should dictate what private universities can teach, whom they can admit and hire, and which areas of study and inquiry they can pursue. In a separate April 14th letter to the government, attorneys for Harvard stated that, quote, neither Harvard nor any other private university can allow itself to be taken over by the federal government. The government's response was swift and punishing. The same day, the federal task force responded by, quote, announcing a freeze on $2.2 billion in multi-year grants and $60 million in a multi-year contract value to Harvard University. The freeze order cited the harassment of Jewish students, but that is a weird dystopian way of saying they didn't bow to our ideological demands. And the, quote, troubling entitlement mindset that is endemic in our nation's most prestigious universities. The Trump admin is just petty and vindictive and immature. Then this reads, the government immediately began implementing the freeze order. Within hours of the freeze order, Harvard began receiving stop work orders, therefore hurting the university's R&D, the research and development. The next morning, on April 15th, President Trump published the following post on his social media website, Truth Social. This judge put Trump's Truth Social post in here as she should. Perhaps Harvard should lose its tax-exempt status and be taxed as a political entity if it keeps pushing political, ideological, and terrorist-inspired supporting quote-unquote sickness. Remember, the tax-exempt status is totally contingent on acting in the public interest. But if the current administration, this is me now speaking, not the document, if the current administration is the one deciding what the public interest is, then that means it's arbitrary, and we're going down a very slippery slope. The following day, President Trump again targeted Harvard. They're not even sly with what they do. Everyone knows that Harvard has, quote, lost its way. They hired the New York Bill D and Chicago Lori L at ridiculously high salary. This is like a manic post that is now in a court document. Within hours of the president's April 16th Truth Social post, Secretary Noem sent HIO a letter entitled Student and Exchange Visitor Program Records Request. The records request demanded voluminous documents, including those not contemplated by any of the applicable statutes or regulations, and threatened to withdraw Harvard's certification in the event of noncompliance. Seeing this laid out line by line is terrifying. They are trying to intimidate Harvard. They're not trying. They're going to the courts, openly intimidating Harvard, and it's almost like they don't care about what the courts say because they don't. The Trump admin doesn't care if the courts push back. They will violate the courts, and I guess we'll see what happens from here. If you guys appreciate my breakdown being surgically precise, and in under 10 minutes, we broke down the legality of it, we broke down the actual document, I gave you a broad overview on the slippery slope of all of this, so if you appreciate what I do, it would mean the world to me if you join the community, subscribe, drop a like, love you all, and peace out.